Welcome to Mormon Land, a podcast all about the news and culture of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and other Mormon faiths. I'm religion reporter Tamara Kimsley, and joining me is Senior Managing Editor David Noyce, who oversees our faith coverage. Hey, Dave.
Hello, Tamara.
Before we start, a quick ask. We invite you all to go to patreon.com/MormonLand. That is patreon.com/MormonLand, and click on Become a Member. For as little as $3 a month, you can access all of the Tribune's faith coverage, podcast transcripts, and the full Mormon Land newsletter. Again, that's Patreon, patreon.com/MormonLand. And if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram at Mormon.land. Now for today's episode. Jeanette Peterson, a lifelong member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, had been attending Sunday services with her wife, Tammy, as faithfully as her job would allow for nearly 5 years when her membership was withdrawn. Although the letter she received informing her of the decision did not state a reason, Jeanette told the Tribune her local lay leader, known as a stake president, had pinned it on her marriage. The church teaches that while being attracted to individuals of the same sex is not a sin, physical intimacy is, and that marriage ought to be between a man and a woman. Ryan and Liz Giles, on the other hand, have been faithful members of two congregations, one in Houston and their current ward in Washington State, since the two women tied the knot in 2021. They have yet to have their membership challenged. All three women join us today to talk about their church experiences as individuals in same-sex marriages and what they believe is behind the inconsistency playing out when it comes to treatment of couples like them. Janet, Ryan, and Liz, welcome.
Hi. Happy to be here.
We're excited to have you. Jeanette, let's start with you. First of all, can you just talk to us about what your stake president told you about why your membership was withdrawn? And did you ever get a sense of why it happened when it happened?
Yeah. So I've lived in this area for a while. It's been at least 10 years or more, and so I've known this gentleman. He was actually in my ward when I was in college. So when I knew he was the stake president, I didn't think anything of it. I mean, he's a good guy. I remember going to his house. I remember hanging out with like dinners and stuff with him and our family. So I thought he was just wanting to catch up and see how I was doing. And because I had been in a position where I couldn't attend church as regularly as I wanted to. And it was kind of that way in the beginning. And Tammy was convinced that it was going to be something different, but that it was going to be the, oh no, you're sinning, vile sin talk. And I was convinced it was just going to be a checkup. And it was both. It was fun. It was not fun. I have my suspicions as to why it happened when it happened. Again, I had been in a position where I wasn't able to attend every single Sunday, and I had just been job change, and it had freed up my Sundays, and I was able to attend more regularly, and we had a bishop change, and I had introduced my wife to people in the presidency. So I know there are multiple ways that it could have gotten to the stake president that I was married in sin, in vile sin, as some would like to say. But so that's how I think it came about, and how I kind of hid for so long. Is just that I wasn't there all the time, and then I was there all the time, and I had been in the primary substituting. I had been in the choir. I had been faithfully helping out in the ward. And Tammy and I had made a conscious effort not to draw attention to ourselves if we had anything that would go against church doctrine. We kind of kept it to ourselves. We were we wouldn't go into the church holding hands. One of us would be holding our son so that we were, some people still think we're mom and daughter and child, which is amusing. But I think it came about because multiple reasons could have come about. But it just got to him, and it was a sad, unfortunate scenario.
And what was that conversation like? How did he broach it with you?
Yeah, so like I said, he started with, hey, how's it going? I see you have a kid now. How's motherhood? And I actually had him with me in the meeting. So in the beginning, he was fine and dandy. And then he just kind of, his demeanor got a little different. He, leaned forward on the desk, put his elbows, and he cleared his throat. And then it was just a 180 in my emotions, and I could feel the change in the room, and I knew what was coming, and I knew it wasn't going to be good. I knew he was about to talk to me about my relationship with my wife, and that is exactly what happened. He's like, so, I hear you're in a homosexual relationship. And I said, yes, sir, I am. And he said, and are you married in this relationship? And I said, yes, sir, I am. And he goes, okay. And, I assume that's not going to change. And I said, no, sir, it's not. And he goes, okay, well, unfortunately, we're gonna have to talk about a membership council and having your name withdrawn from church records. And I said, okay. And at that point, I was kind of too shocked to really process it. So I just said, okay, I understand. I wanted to get out. My son was starting to get a little bit antsy and squirmy, and I think that was a blessing in disguise that I could get out so quickly because I had him with me. And I walked outside, and that's when it kind of hit, and I was just so, I was like, oh gosh, this is real. I think I'm about to get excommunicated. I think I'm about to get kicked out of the church. Like I don't have any defense for this, and I am not prepared. And I'm a person who likes to read rule books. I like to be prepared. I like to have notes with me. So I didn't know what to do. I saw my bishop, and he knew what was coming because he had just had a conversation. He's like, I wanted to tell you so bad not to come, but I knew they were going to go through with it anyway. And he was very emotional, which I was just like, I have to get out. I have to take care of my son. He's squirmy. I have to be a mother right now. I can't deal with this emotion. And I got into the car, and my son was all of a sudden calm. No big deal. Wouldn't have imagined he was squirmy at all. And I had this huge weight of grief of just, oh my gosh, this is happening. And as heavy as that grief was, there was an immediate just, again, emotional talking about every single time. It was just an immediate warmth and overbearing love. And it was so much that I was like, oh gosh, I don't even feel this for my kid. This is intense. This is like emotions were coming out of me, and I'm not an emotional person. And I just heard it's gonna be okay. And so I was like, okay, it's gonna be okay. I don't know how this is gonna be okay, but maybe in the council, everything will go well. It will be fine. It will work itself out. I don't need to worry about it. I can feel sad in this moment, but I can also feel super loved. So I called my sister because I didn't want to hear I told you that's what was going to happen from Tammy.
And I know, just for our listeners, Tammy, we should note, wasn't there, right? Because she's not a member of the church. She was going with you and supporting you, but was not, in fact, a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But I want to ask you one follow-up question, which, first of all, thank you for sharing that. And second, how much do you feel like that decision to withdraw your membership was driven by an individual leader?
Oh, I do think that is definitely reminiscence of where I live and the politics of which I live in. So I don't feel it was spiritually led, if by any means.
And again, for our listeners, you live on the border between Texas and Louisiana, which is so a pretty conservative area, right? And you feel like that played into some of this?
I do, because there are so many people who can have spiritual experiences and not put politics into it, and I do feel like it was an individual idea, not a spiritual idea.
So Jeanette, what's been, and you've touched on this a little bit, and we've felt it in your emotions, of course, but what's been the impact of this on yourself, your wife, Tammy, and other family members?
For me personally, it's actually helped, which is in where I'm at now, because you're asking me a little bit further down the road. It has helped, and I've felt immense love. I've felt support. I've had so many different spiritual experiences since this has happened. Had you asked me right after it happened, I would have been devastated, and I wouldn't have seen the silver lining at all. But I personally have been strengthened. The impact around me has not been that case. I get so many family members and friends asking, why do you want to still go? Because I still attend my ward. Why do you want to attend somewhere that doesn't want you? Why do you want to affiliate with a church that doesn't want to affiliate with you? Why are you putting yourself through this type questions? And I mean, I can give you a little bit of light, but I can't be the light for you. My answer is kind of the same to everyone, is because I know I'm where I need to be. I'm okay with who I am, and I know that I'm loved, and I don't have a problem with that. I do understand why it would be a little bit more hard for someone that doesn't understand that. For example, Tammy does not wish to really ever investigate the church because of this. We were having missionaries over, and she was learning all the lessons, and because of this, she just is like, I will go to church to support you, but I don't want to do anything else. I've had some of my siblings be like, I'll take my name out too. I won't attend because of this. I've had some people come up to me and be like, I attend because you attend. Impact for me has been fantastic. Impact for everybody else has been a little wishy-washy, up and down. Depends on where you are in your spiritual journey.
Is your congregation still very welcoming to you, or?
The ones that have always known that we were married have still continued to support us. And the ones who are learning about it are, we've only had one bad one, and we already knew that was how she leaned. So
okay.
Liz and Ryan, let's get you into this conversation. I'm curious, listening to her story, if you have any thoughts onto why your experience has been different.
Yeah, I think some of it is just that leadership roulette. We've just been lucky. I mean, like Jeanette was saying, she'd been attending for 5 years before this happened, and we've only been married for 3. And we know that, at any moment leadership could change, or frankly, even without the leadership changing, someone above them in the, leadership hierarchy could change their minds, get wind that we're attending, and kind of pass down a mandate that something be done. So in some ways, I think it's just luck. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, sometimes I do wonder, to what extent our Instagram account is providing a level of privilege there. We only created the account 6 months ago, though, so the first 2.5 years of our marriage, we were just a regular couple attending. But I do feel like now, to an extent, similar to Charlie Bird and
much
Ryan,
lesser extent.
Much lesser extent. We have 3,000 followers, but I do feel like that might provide a little bit of a barrier there.
And I do think there is also, so we frequently get mistaken for sister missionaries, and we have to be no badge, we're that's not it, or sisters or roommates. So I do think there is some level of protection also in that. If people don't look too hard or too far into it, I think some members of our ward probably do still think that we are just, that we're not married. And that also provides some sort of protection, I guess.
Yeah. We definitely have seen effects of leadership roulette in terms of how we're able to participate, though. In our ward in Houston, we were able to minister. In this ward, we're not. And things like that, where our level of participation is varied based on what individual leaders have said we can and can't do, which has been interesting.
Liz and Ryan, you both talked about wondering if this ever happened to you. So I just want to play that question out. Okay, if you did get called in, do you know what you would do? Have you kind of thought that through, or do you not want to think about that possibility?
No, it's something we definitely think about every time that we have to meet with a bishop or any kind of leader. That's the first thing that we wonder is this the moment that something happens?
Honestly, every time I walk into the building, there's a little part of me that wonders, is this the Sunday where we'll get approached?
Yeah. And I think when I've thought about it, I think initially I would be devastated. But there's a part of me also that feels like it doesn't change a whole lot about my participation. And as it stands, we aren't able to hold official callings. We aren't able to take the sacrament. Obviously can't attend the temple. So a lot of what we are really permitted to do is basically just show up to church. And that's something we could still do if we were to be excommunicated. And so part of me thinks, at this moment, I'm still in charge of my own participation in my own spirituality, and that would remain if I were excommunicated. So I think it would hurt, and it would be difficult, and it probably would make me reevaluate my relationship to the church in some ways, but practically, in a practical sense, it wouldn't change my participation.
So you're not able to, you've been told not to take the sacrament, or that's something you're choosing not to do?
We've been told not to.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And for those who don't know who Charlie Bird is, do you want to just give kind of a quick descriptor?
Yeah, they're a couple in Utah. Charlie Bird was the mascot for BYU for a number of years, and they recently got married and are still actively participating in their ward. And on their social medias, they share a lot about their experience.
And I know, Jeanette, you brought up that example to your stake president, asked if he was aware of this married same-sex couple up in Utah who seemed to be able to continue to maintain their membership. And I wonder if you share a little bit about what his response to that was.
Yeah, so he told me not everyone takes their role seriously as a judge in Israel, and that he as a stake president is required to step in cases of sexual immorality and felonies. So that is why he didn't, or he just said that Charlie Bird's stake president didn't take his role seriously.
And do you have any other thoughts, Jeanette, just listening to Liz and Ryan talk about their own experience?
I actually was talking, I don't remember who I was talking with, but I was like, I wonder if they do have a little bit more protection because they are a little bit more well known. So I did also have that thought. And then I also had the thought of, well, maybe their leaders are not as politically, like maybe they live in a area that's not as we want no people of the LGBT community even existing type mindset.
Yeah, it's interesting because our ward in Houston, we were in kind of like a liberal city within a very conservative state. And in Yakima, it's the opposite. So we're in a conservative town in a very liberal state. Yeah, I think part of what it comes down to is we were really quickly known by our ward and stake leaders. Like before we got married and moved to Houston, we sent messages introducing ourselves to the bishop, and they thankfully he went right into let's make sure you're welcomed mode. And we were assigned the sister that we ministered to was the two sisters of the two stake presidency members who lived in our ward. So we were very quickly in the homes of our stake president and the first counselor. And that definitely helped alleviate some of those anxieties about getting that call into an office.
And currently we live in the same ward, or the same town, at least, that Liz grew up in. And so many of the ward members that we have now knew her as a little kid and, knew her as she basically her whole life, essentially. Mm-hmm. And I think that helps a little bit too, having kind of some background knowledge of who she is as a person.
So Liz and Ryan, you guys have talked about this already, and Jeanette, you touched on this. You two, Liz and Ryan, have developed this Instagram following, and you've launched a podcast about your decision to stay in the church as a same-sex couple. What have you heard from other LGBTQ members of the church trying to stay active, date, marry, or whatever the case may be, as you've been public and sharing your own stories?
The trend that we consistently hear is that most ward members have been really great. They welcome with a lot of love, just our friends, the ones that don't want same-sex couples in the ward kind of just stay away and don't get in their faces about it. But it's the higher up the leadership chain where that friction comes. Mm-hmm. Whether that's stake level or even Area 70 level.
Yeah. And we have seen among the LGBTQ members themselves, there's a huge variety, obviously, of opinions, but I think there's a really increasing number of LGBTQ members of the church who don't want to choose one or the other, who want to find this middle ground. And so that, I think, used to be pretty rare for people to see, and I think that's becoming increasingly common. I guess I wouldn't say it's common, but it's becoming definitely more of an option for people. Mm-hmm. And so I think that it might end up beginning to become a friction point just because it'll be happening more often, and it'll be a question that more leaders will have to start addressing.
Mm-hmm. We had a really interesting interaction. Our ward just got a new Relief Society president a couple of weeks ago. And she's someone who on her social media, we very much know where she leans politically, and it's very much not the way we lean. And she had messaged asking if she could come do like a home visit. And so we said yes, but we were nervous about what that would look like. But in that discussion, she was just like, look, we are so like, our ward is so much smaller in attendance than it is on the rosters. And we need anyone who's willing to help, basically, like anyone who's willing to do visits or serve or bring meals. Like basically we need you. And that was like a really fascinating interaction where I could see that she was putting aside her like political ideologies and just recognizing that even on a logistical level, like they can't afford to push us out of the ward because they just need like more people to help out. So I thought that was interesting.
Jeanette, I want all three of you to address this if you feel so inclined. Given the church's stance against same-sex marriage and its handbook instructions allowing, though not mandating, disciplinary measures, I think that language is may, against same-sex, in these cases, it seems these inconsistencies will continue to happen for same-sex couples. And we talked about the leadership roulette and possible reasons for that. What would you like to see the church do differently that could change that? Jeanette, you want to start?
I definitely think there needs to be this is when it needs to be addressed, is when, the may be necessary part in the handbook is the part where the leader gets to choose, which I do understand. I mean, that gives them free agency, but you also have to be spiritually inclined. And I know that we really need, good or bad, it needs to be crystal clear of this is when you need to step in. And that needs to be straight down to all the leaders, all the way to the bishops, so that there isn't that inconsistency. And again, good or bad. I just want it to be consistent. I know that good, it will hurt some people, and bad, it will hurt some people. So that is not something that I want to choose. That can be left to the prophet.
Ryan and Liz, what do you think on that?
Yeah, I think that's, I agree completely. I think part of the hardship of it is just never knowing when or if anything is going to happen. And if there were more consistency in what the policy actually were, it would take a lot of that fear out of it because you would know what to expect in general. The downside, of course, to that is that the looseness of those regulations do allow for more freedoms if you do happen to have leadership that's willing to grant that. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword, but I do agree that what's the word? Kind of like just the fear of something possibly happening is a very real fear for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have some friends that are another two women married that are members of the church that do not attend because they fear that if they show up, their membership will be revoked. Like, they want to participate. They still believe in a lot of the tenets of the church and the gospel, but they're so afraid that if they show up, they'll be on the radar of the bishop and the stake president, so they don't go.
So they retain their faith and they would attend if they could, but they're afraid. Yeah,
I was struck by Liz. I think it was Liz who said, every time you go to church, you wonder, who is this going to be? That seems like it would be really hard to do every Sunday, to have to pass through your mind. I mean, let me just ask you a question. Would you rather the church say, okay, you can be against same-sex marriage, but just remove about whether people have to be at risk for their membership? Can
you rephrase that question?
In other words, just remove completely the language, about without changing the theology about being against same-sex marriage. I mean, the church is not obligated necessarily to take action against someone who's doing something against what the church teaches. There's plenty of members who do things against what the church teaches. Their membership's never threatened. Mm-hmm. I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, I know that sounds like a leading question, but I want to know what you think.
Yeah, I do think that would address that fear. And like you said, I mean, there's a lot of church members who do things that are potentially contrary to, the rules or the commandments, and they retain their membership. And I think a lot more people would feel comfortable showing up and expressing their faith and getting to worship in the way that they feel called to do if that threat were removed. And personally, I don't think it would really constitute a threat to the organization of the church. Because, I mean, like I said, I'm going to show up anyway. So I'm still going to be there. So I don't know. I think that would be really helpful.
And not only would that help like queer couples and members themselves, but I also think drones of people are leaving the church because of its like LGBT viewpoints and policies. And I think if the church made some strides to build some bridges there and, treat us like children of God within the organization, I think some of those people might be more inclined to stay.
And frankly, I think it would help the leaders. I think a lot of bishops are a little at a loss as for what to do when couples like us show up. And they don't want to do something wrong, but they don't want to go against policies. And I think if there were something more clear cut, it would help a lot of the leaders too feel more comfortable and feel like they're doing the right thing in their callings and their stewardship.
Well, clearly there are some bishops and or stake presidents who aren't taking this action, who may not want to take this action, obviously. Mm-hmm. And I guess the inverse could be true too. People are taking that action. That may not be because they want to. They just feel like they have to. Which, Jeanette, that sounds like what your stake president felt like, right?
Right. During our second conversation, he did get a little bit more on the personal side of, back to the man who knew me versus the man who was a leader. I mean, he definitely was both in that conversation, but he just was like, this is so heartbreaking for me, which I'm sure in his mindset it was. It did not feel that way in the moment. It kind of still doesn't feel that way, but he did feel like he was required to do it because it was in his sense, it was one of the two things that you have to step in for. You have to step in for felonies and you have to step in for sexual immorality. And so for him, it was, I have to do this, even though I love you and your family. I have to do this. I have to release you from your covenants.
And the letter that you shared with me really emphasized that. It really had this tone of like, out of love for you, we are taking those steps. And I'm just chuckling because of the expression you just made. Now you're shaking your head. I know you already talked about this, Jeanette. If you want to add anything else, and then Liz and Ryan, I'm curious to hear too. I'm sure you get a lot of questions, be it from relatives, loved ones, or people over the internet, like, why the heck do you stay? If there's anything else more that you wanted to add to that, why this was so important to you, and why it has, like you said, it will continue to be important regardless of official status, as with Jeanette, as you've demonstrated, it's been the case for you.
So I continue to go, much like Liz and Ryan has said, is because my participation of being a member of Christ's fold is not dependent on my status in a church. I may not be in good standing with the church, but I am in good standing with God, and I'm in a great standing with God. I still am allowed to communicate with him. I'm still allowed to receive personal revelation with him. I'm still allowed to be a child of God. I'm still allowed to be his daughter. I'm still allowed to be me exactly how he made me. And I have thought a little bit more as to why I don't want to go somewhere else. And it really is, it's every other church that I've even tried to attend. I'm very open-minded, and if someone invites me to church, I'll be like, yeah, let's do it. I love church. Let's go. So I've tried a lot of different churches, not necessarily looking around, just because I've been invited. And I find I like the structure of being able to talk to people about what you're learning and not picking and choosing. I like that Sunday school goes through the entire scriptures. Every 4 years, you have, if you're following along, read the scriptures in their entirety. Every 4 years, you have deep dived into some sort of it. You're not picking and choosing. And I feel like when I discuss things with other Christians, it tends to be more of a superficial, oh, well, I read this one part in the Bible. And I'm like, well, yeah, okay, but there's this part in the Bible, this part in the Bible, this part in the Book of Mormon, this part in the Doctrine and Covenants, this part in conference talks. Like, where are you getting just this one thing from? There's so much more to being a child of God than just, oh, don't take this many steps on a Sunday, otherwise you'll be stoned. Like, that was so last year. Come on, people. We need more depth and more meat on our bones. And I really enjoy that. Being just in class, I'm not allowed to talk, even though my teacher says that I totally can. I enjoy being able to continue to grow, and I don't get that elsewhere. So I know I'm where, like I said before, I know I'm where I'm supposed to be, even if I'm not in good standing with the church.
Thank you.
I would second, just about everything that Jeanette said. Like, I actually feel like my relationship with God is stronger than it's ever been because my worship has become so personal. So little of it is like required of me anymore. In fact, in some ways, it's not even allowed to me. And so I create my own relationship with God through that. And so, but I stay with the church for a few reasons. On the spiritual side, it's just that I know so strongly that this is where I'm meant to be, like Jeanette said, but on the practical side as well, there's still just so much beauty and goodness and truth, in my opinion, in the teachings of the church, and so much goodness in the community that we find in the church. And so I don't want to leave. I like what I have there. And additionally, I think Liz and I both feel a sort of responsibility to younger versions of us, basically sitting in the pews, to know that, there's a place for them however they want to worship. If there are LGBTQ youth or young adults or anybody, if there are other LGBTQ people sitting in those pews, I want them to know that there's happiness and goodness and a place for them. Mm-hmm. So,
and it must feel like this question.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like if there's a little Jeanette in the pews, I want her or him. I want them to see me. I want them to know that they're okay where they're at.
And also, I feel like it's so healthy for the family members of LGBT people, which is every family, basically. I don't know. If us being there and them knowing us personally makes them act a little bit more lovingly and openly to their LGBT loved ones, then that means the world to me.
Jeanette Peterson and Ryan and Liz Giles, thank you so much for joining us, and to Dave Noyce and to our producer, Chris Samuels. we remind our listeners that they can keep up on all the happenings in and about the church by subscribing to the Salt Lake Tribune's free Mormon Land newsletter. Just go to sltrib.com to sign up, and we'll talk again next time on Mormon Land.